Hey guys, another book review. One, this one is Big Sur by Jack Kerouac, and I do not have the book because I actually listened to the audiobook, which is actually an interesting experience because it was narrated by Ethan Hawke, which I didn't really notice till the end because it was like until like the very last minute because I could have swore like I probably I don't know why I didn't check that beforehand or why I didn't it didn't occur to me till the end of it, I guess because I was identifying the voice differently, I guess, with through Jack Kerouac's writing, I guess. So maybe I just never made the connection, but yeah, Jack Kerouac. This would be my second book by him. I started on the road. That one was like that was his first one, I believe, and yeah, that one was mainstream success, brought him to fame, and I remember reading it a few years ago and kind of judging it a little bit. I remember being a little bit uh, adverse to kind of the drug use or certain things in the book. But maybe it was just like it had to grow on me a little bit because that style. But then, excuse me, in hindsight, I do kind of see that romantic clef, I think, kind of implemented. It's like it's very obvious that Sal Paradise is like a kind of a fictionalized version of Jack Kerouac and all these other characters, the beat poets like Neil Cassidy is Dean Moriarty, which and apparently in this book, in this other one, Big Sur, this is I think probably about a good amount of time has passed between this and On the Road, so it's like 62 is when this novel came out, and yeah, he wasn't allowed to use the same names, like the same fictionalized names, for this one. So instead, he used like different ones where he's still using Jack, except now it's like Jack Deleuze or something. And then Neil Cassidy is now Cody Pomeroy. So, but they're still pretty obvious once you start seeing a little bit more and you have to do a little bit more digging into Jack Kerouac's real life. You understand that these similarities are pretty obvious. So, but yeah, I was trying to get a little bit more into the beat poets. I did hear a lot of good things about them and bad things alike. There were kind of this novel. He goes deep. He goes like really deep into it, and I find most interesting is that like his character throughout this, and the style is very free verse, like very it's almost like jazz a little bit because there's like a long On the Road too. There's a lot of like interactions with kind of parallel jazz type people. So the mentality of jazz, where it's like free improvisation. It's like the spirit, and basically, so Jack's going through like kind of a depression at this moment, and kind of this is again kind of reflecting his own life, mirroring it, and he's going up to Big Sur, California, which for those of you who don't know, I've never been, but it's this very vast mountain range that goes back to like Native American times, and it overlooks the ocean. It's like right next to the like right next to the sea line, and it's just very gorgeous. And there's like lots of beauty in him trying to find solitude because he's trying to really just escape for his own sake too. Because ever since his first novel was published, On the Road, he when he was like I think in New York or something, he had to like literally people were like breaking into his house, trying to be like, oh Jack, we needed to write another poem, like give us some free verse, give us some insight, like they wanted all of these young 20 something year olds would be like scratching, knocking on his door, but and he in this really not aggravated, but like made him kind of, because he was like, I don't have any answers. I think there's a part in the book where he's like, I didn't have any answers. I don't know what to say. Like I'm almost 40, and I drink every night, and he goes into the whole. It's like almost slightly comedic, but it's like really. I think it's a really interesting kind of analysis of how drinking and how easy it is to get into like an alcoholic to be kind of turned on or into and easily enamored or by the idea of drinking again. So it's like for him, it's like it starts with like one drink, and he explains it very beautiful in the book. But for those of you who read it, you probably know what I'm referring to. It's earlier on in the novel. It's not a huge read, but yeah, it's like it's not intimidating, but like the very I've heard other people say it's like pretty easy. It has a nice flow, and it really does. And again, I listen to it because it's kind of like it's almost like you're talking to someone, like you're engaging with a conversation. He's not overly intellectual in the sense where it's not, but it's almost a bit of that Hemingway type, iceberg type thing where it's like the idea is like unfolding as he's writing it, and he's just like, oh, all these people I know, and I went to this house and then this house. But yeah, he was talking about drinking, and he was saying like it starts with a one drink, and then you're hung over, and the next day you're like, well, I can just cure this hangover with more drinking, and then it's like then you get into another thing, and then you don't sleep at all the next night because you're so if you're not hungover, you're like paranoid or whatever. It just like goes down this vicious cycle, and yeah, it's just very definitely sheds a light on people who are addicted to anything, really. And what I found really interesting about this book is that there's not like a plot unfolding, but it's just kind of like a, like I said, a semi-autobiographical, semi-fictionalized account of his life. And he spends, all this, his summer, I think he wrote it in a 10-day period, but I think it's about a summer he spends up in Big Sur. And he's basically trying to escape the pressures of being a famous writer, and he's like going there probably to seek inspiration again. And yeah, to kind of like just to be one of like nobody for a little bit, and like there's certain people that that he can't help but hang around again, like Cody Pomeroy just has that zest for life, and and if you know anything about Neil Cassady, he was kind of like that in real life, like that type of, he got Jack Kerouac a little bit, he kind of like brought him, tugged him along a little bit, and they're like really good friends, but with that there's like certain costs, and he talks about that too, where it's like the thing with like hanging around different people, and like, oh, like you can, all the beat poets, and like it wasn't this type of thing where they knew like the right place to go, like, okay, who makes the best this, like who somebody who's like really good at like like a lot, somebody who knows like something about Buddhist history or something, and like they has like encyclopedic knowledge about this or that, and they just start all these conversations. It's literally about anything, and it's like it could be anything from an intellectual, like poetry, or people would be so yeah, it's like the spirit of improvisation, like the pressures of like but with that freedom there's also this other pressure that's like tied to it, like there's the day after, there's the hangover, this thing where he's tired of being associated with this whole thing, and basically it's like it's kind of like a mental digression a little bit, like or like a little bit of him steeping into a bit of a kind of mental panic attack, really, because throughout the novel you see this, he's getting more and more it's easy to like slip labels on it, like a midlife crisis or whatever, but I'd say most of all it's like he's like hit a road kind of, and he's just so sick of like all these different associations that he has with certain groups and labels, and like the beat poets are like smelly and unkempt, and and he's just but at the same time he also doesn't want to be associated with the beat poets, and it's like somebody goes on like the whole entire thing, like this long digression, which really isn't a digression if you like kind of look at the story and make sense of it, but this of like how the beat poets are like the only ones who actually wipe their bums or something like that, and like all these other people who are so-called civilized, and yeah, and basically it's there's like a cost, there's like a side effect that's like closely correlated with being this open with your life and being this adventurous. It's like it's like this wanting to just forget the rigid structures of society and what people expect of you of like this life, and of what people want from you, and just be like and then just like go where the like-minded free-spirited people are. But like as soon as that happens, like you're depressed anyway. It's like it's like Jack's character like says something along the lines of like, here I am in one of the most beautiful places on earth, and I'm still depressed. It's like anybody I think can kind of agree to this, where to a certain extent on my personal account, when I like went to France and parts of Europe, going almost a year ago, it was last spring or summer, and it was basically, it was like spent a month just traveling around France and Europe in general, and bordering places and hit up several different countries, like Luxembourg, like um, Belgium, and Andorra, a bit of Spain and Italy, and I passed through Portugal, and like, and and a bit of Germany too. And it's just like you start to realize that just because you're in a different place, like nothing, like if you're prone to certain things and behaviors, like uh, you know that's like no amount of traveling or just getting away from it all, or like a vacation spot's like not gonna necessarily take it away. I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do that. It's certainly a great thing to have, switch things up. But I think this novel, I think it's like makes it clear that, and other authors too, that people greatly admire, myself included, like David Foster Wallace, where you think at a certain point, like you're just gonna reach this apex of this plateau, and you're gonna have money and success, and not just inconsequential type success, like frivolous type reality TV success. I'm talking like writers, like great writers, and like even then, to be shoulder to shoulder with like John Updike or Eudora Welty and Tom DeLillo and all these other great American writers. But at the same time, you're still depressed. You're still this person prone to insecurities, and yeah, that's what I really love about this one too, is that he's not pulling any punches when it comes to that. So interesting thing I thought was that there's a bit of an unreliable narrator thing going on too with Jack Deleuze, is that he like part of him wants to enjoy life. I was talking like sink his teeth into the sand, really experience the world, and not just sit about and write about it. Yet here he was at the same time, like and yeah, she was full blown near the end of like what a panic attack is, and like certain things that are contradictory or seem contradictory. Like he's like talking about, maybe this isn't a good example, but I just thought it was interesting that he mentioned likes reading Steppenwolf by Hermann Hesse, which I reviewed here, and one of my favorite novels. And like he doesn't bash it, but he maybe it's just the character that's again unreliable, and he's saying that like I couldn't stand Steppenwolf, and I couldn't stand sitting in that cabin reading that this is this German intellectual type person, like like walking around Switzerland, like complaining about the bourgeoisie, and like this class type of thing, and these I couldn't stand hearing about him whining and moping and stuff when he could have just gone outside or something, and that's kind of like, it's tempting to say that no, he's misunderstanding the novel, but again, it's the kind of thing that I like about that narrator that's fully human in a way. Like other times when he's like near to the end of the novel, he starts like an affair type of thing with a woman named Billy, and I'm not sure if she might be based off somebody in real life, but it might be a composite, maybe if they took a couple different girls. But he talks about like a Billy girl that's she has a kid named Elliot, I think, and who's just like this really emotionally distraught, kind of like really clingy child, and you feel really bad for him throughout the novel, and like he's like, it's kind of like this is when his depressions are really hitting for Jack, and he's like he Cody Pomeroy, I think, or is it the other one? He's like, he talks about like a band of people he hangs around with, and he's like this thing, this like very gregarious guy that's like he's all for fishing, and he's like recaps tires and stuff, and, as a main job. But he's just like it's like this very, he talks about things like what's like to be a fisher, and like stuff like chopping wood, like the simple joys in life and stuff. And then like, but then he's like conflicted, because then he's like looking at the dead fish, and he's like, this is just some, like, what's the point of fishing? You're just killing this innocent fish for no reason, just for our pleasure. And he's like, yeah. And it's like, and then it starts to realize him like just how like just how like irritable these people become. He starts like loathing them, like, why am I hanging around these people, like this, like the sudden like how again, I'm not sure if it was Cody Pomeroy or whatever, but it's just like this, he's like so like sexually free, and he's like basically like treated like the way he treats women and stuff, he's like disgusted by it, like why, and like he's like describing himself like as like suddenly asexual, like suddenly he's just like he is at the end of his rope, desperate, and he's like lashes out and anger at her and feels bad about it, and then goes back, and then tenderly comforts her, and it's just like this divisive thing back and forth, and it's just like, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, it's like uh, it basically ends with them leaving Big Sur, and yeah, it's like an interesting type of thing. Like, you see kind of an image, like you see. It's another part I really liked about like what they said about, you're seeing like when you see people passing by in the street, or like see people in cars, something effective, like you're seeing a little glimpse into the windows of other people's lives, just a really quick type ephemeral glimpses that, and you don't know the full spectrum of their life, the dramas, the whole canvas of complexities in human nature that embody their life, and that's something I really like. This is that he really just, like, again, no pulls no punches, and yeah, I'd recommend it. Definitely not for everybody in certain phases in life. I can tell you that I think there's a phase in life for people to start reading certain literature. There's like spiritual crisis type, Unimano, Miguel de Unimano, like stuff like that. I don't know, you meant to say that because I'm actually reading, or I actually just finished like something by him, something to do with the tragic life or something. And basically I realized that that's probably something it's so spiritually intense, and just like at the end of his rope, like Spanish Catholic type thing, so much to the point, it's so potent. I feel like it's something that I wouldn't really get or appreciate till I'm like 40 or 50 even. So, not to say I don't regret reading it, but it's like one of those things. So what I think I'm trying to say is that there's different kinds of literature for different periods of time. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, and if you feel compelled about Patreon, go ahead and do that. Though I always question it every single day, like if it's even worth running. But a little goes a long way. So, thank you again for watching.